Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we're taking a look at this knife here. This is the Bear & Son, oh good heavens this name, I guess slide lock folding knife. The model number is the CB10N. So yeah. Let's go ahead and get this review kicked off. Let's start with our size comparisons, as always, because that's what we always do. There's our Rat 1 and our Rat 2. Very similar in size to Rat 2. In fact, I think they're pretty much they're like identical in overall length. Pretty different in shape, but nearly identical in length. In fact, pretty identical. Next up, dropping all my knives. Let's go ahead and get our Benchmade bug out here, and our PM2. What is on my bug out? Not sure what that was. And actually, I usually do the big guy on top and the little one on the bottom. So there we go. I'm thinking about getting a new bug out for the channel. I've had this one for a long time, and as you can see, it's just a regular old plain bug out. Plastic and S30V, and I like it, but I don't know. I don't carry it anymore. I only have it for size comparisons. It's broken in really well, but yeah, I need to maybe get a new bug out. Anyways, moving on. Bring out our Civivis. There's the Praxis, the Elementum. Again, very, very similar in size to the Elementum. And the only other comparison we're going to bring out is, let's compare against the Sencut Scepter, because, yeah, very, very similarly sized knives. Alrighty, so this is a pretty interesting knife. There's two different versions. This, of course, is the wood-handled version. On Knife Center, this is the Bear & Son Slide Lock Folding Knife, 3.375-inch D2 satin clip point blade, Coca-Cola wood handles with stainless steel bolsters, CB10N. Yeah, don't you just love those alphabet soup names? But yeah, so this is a crossbar lock, which, by the way, come on, everyone, can we just, now the patent's expired on this from Benchmade, and everyone's coming out with their own versions of the Axis lock. Everyone's like trying to come up with new names for it. The pivot lock, the XR lock, the Able lock, you know, what have you. Let's all just call it a crossbar lock. I mean, come on. Benchmade had the Axis lock, you know, that's a patented name, good for them. Everyone else, just call it a crossbar lock. We have so many terms for this lock, and it's so unnecessary because in most cases they're exactly the same thing. But whatever. D2 blade, I'm going to call this a clip point. This knife was donated to the channel by Old Tonto Guy. He might call this a reverse Tonto, but that's just because he's a Tonto fanatic. So yeah, made in the USA, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, we've got some thoughts to share on this knife, but before we get into those, I'm going to show you guys how it cuts, carries, and feels in the hand. Let's go do it. Hey guys, well, it's the day after Thanksgiving, and I weigh about 20 pounds more than I did a week ago. Been trying to rest off the gluttony of yesterday today, but you know what, it's time to come outside and do a little bit of review cutting. Today we're doing the cutting footage for the Bear & Son, whatever the number on this is. I know you guys won't be seeing this video until like January, so maybe the giveaway has already happened, but this is one of the giveaway prizes for my 1K giveaway. Alright, so I've been carrying this knife a little bit, especially yesterday. I carried it just kind of around the house and stuff, and yeah, I've got some thoughts, and let's go ahead and do a little bit of review cutting. So, before we get into all that, let's talk about the action. So as you can see here, it's a crossbar lock. It is running on washers, I believe. Pretty sure they're washers, and I think they are plastic washers. Haven't really been able to take this guy apart too much. I'll go into that more within the actual in the actual review. But it's an interesting action. It takes some getting used to, not gonna lie. But as you can see here, I'm able to pop it out with no wrist. I can reverse flick it, and you know, you can swing it shut. One of the things that makes it a little bit difficult to get used to is that the blade with this mirror polish is very slippery, and so you've really got to make sure you're in that hole when you flick it out. And the hole is a little bit small, kind of oddly shaped, but it does work. Once you get the hang of it, it does absolutely work. Let's talk about the carry. Tip up clip, deep carry clip. It is not reversible. It's a pretty big miss on this knife, seeing as how it has the crossbar lock and everything. Let's go ahead and take a look-see here in the pocket. That new Thanksgiving belly. But yeah, the clip works pretty good. It does get hung up on that screw there a lot, but it goes in the pocket. It's a small knife, so you know, you can get down in there and around, and it's not very heavy. So the carry to me is pretty good. The ergonomics, again, small knife, so if you have big hands, probably not going to be your favorite knife, but I can just barely get all 4 fingers on there, and it's pretty neutral. And yeah, it works pretty good. You have like a little bit of a place for your thumb here. Wish it was jimped, but it's not, and that's okay. The pocket clip can be a little bit annoying on some pusher, like if you're some pusher cuts. If you're pushing down a little bit harder, the clip can dig into your hand, but it's not bad by any stretch. All right, let's get into the cutting. So the blade is D2, and we've got this little spay blade is what I'd call this. I know old Tonto guy, the guy that donated this knife to the channel, would probably call it a reverse Tonto, but I'd call this a spay blade. Good EDC shape, especially on a knife this small. You know, you've got, you know, plenty of edge, I would say, but you can also get to your tip real easy. You can do some drilling, you can do some utility cuts. Let's go ahead and do some of that stuff. So we'll tilt down. I've just got some leftover pieces of cardboard scratch. I have not taken a behind the edge measurement just because my calipers are broken. I haven't gotten around to fixing and or replacing them yet. And yeah, I'm not sure I will, but it does come down to a pretty thin edge here. It is a flat grind, not a full flat grind as you can see there, but it is a flat grind. I would estimate that this edge is probably about 20 thousandths. So I think that's fine. D2 steel. Go ahead and do some tilt down even further. Let's get some utility cuts going. There we go, get all the way through there. So yeah, it's really easy to get down to that tip and get your utility cuts going. So overall, the blade is, I would say it's slicey enough. I wouldn't call it a super slicer, and I wouldn't call it a, you know, amazing blade, but for just everyday carry, I think it's pretty good. Good shape, decent geometry. So yeah, let's go ahead and get our rope out here. Do a little bit of the old pull through. A little bit of a struggle there. Do some pushes. 1, 2, 3. Okay, actually, it did fairly well at that for a such a small blade. Yeah, it got through 2 with that push, got through 1.5 with that one, and got through not quite so many over there, but yeah, not bad. All right, now for the real test. Let's get the pool noodle out here. Pick those up. All right, get over here, you. Okay, so I was able to go fairly thin. It did grab and tear a little bit there. And a little bit there. So, yeah, the edge is not the most even thing, but it wasn't terrible either. I was able to get fairly decent control over the edge, and I knew where it was when I was cutting, so yeah, that's all good to me. Alrighty, let's get back to the table and finish up this review. Alrighty, so the Baron Sun Crossbar Shiny Boy. Look how shiny that knife is. Look, you can. Oh, look, I'm upside down. Not wearing a hat. How weird. Let's go ahead and start off with what I like. Number one, I like that it's made in the USA. That's really cool. You very rarely find USA-made knives, especially with like a crossbar lock, and fairly decent materials for, you know, this knife comes in about $70. So yeah, it's cool that if you're someone who, you know, just really wants to support, you know, USA-made manufacturing. Whoa, I almost cut myself. You can get one of these. That's really, really cool. Next thing, I think this wood looks great. It's very, I mean, you can tell it's wood, and a lot of people, you know, you may or may not be a fan of wood, but I think the color is really good. We have like this deep reddish brown. It's very, very nice. The wood type, what was it? Was it just, yeah, Cocobolo wood? Yeah, Cocobolo wood. Nice. Let's focus in here. You can't see this side too good because of the clip, but I think it's a good-looking knife. It's kind of modern but classic all at once. You know, it's kind of a, you know, this wouldn't be out of place in the 60s, but it also has a lot of modern features like the crossbar lock and stuff. So it's a good look as far as the wood goes. The blade's a little bit goofy to me, but I think like especially the handle looks really, really good. The mirror polishing we'll talk about later, but it is kind of interesting to see it on this knife, you know, at this price point. You can tell a lot of work went into this. You know, the mirrored bolsters look good with this wood. I like the bolster look. I like this little butt cap look. I think that's really, really cool. And the inlay work here is actually really nice. If we look here, you know, again, keep in mind this is a budget knife, but it's very smooth transitions between the wood and the metal. And if we look down here, there's a little bit of gapping right there. But by and large, the scales are fitted on really, really well. Very good, tight tolerances. And yeah, that's what I like to see. Again, not perfect. There is some gapping, but it is a budget knife, so I think it's really, really good. And you can tell that some care was put into this knife. Next thing, I think the size is going to be really attractive to a lot of people. Oh my goodness gracious, we did not take a blade length measurement at the beginning of this video. I am so sorry, guys. You're all probably yelling at me like, Gideon, you idiot! You forgot the blade length measurement. We're coming in just a little bit over 3 inches. I did read the blade length off of Knife Center, 3.375 inches. So yeah, that looks about right. I think that's a good size. It's a pretty small knife, and it folds up into a, you know, pretty compact little package. Here's the Civivi Elementum. You see there that this knife is quite a bit thicker and heavier, but it's narrower in this dimension. Yeah, it's a good size. If you have big monster hands, I think I said this in the cutting footage, but you know, you might have some issues, but the ergonomics are pretty neutral. For me, I think they work out pretty well. I don't feel the clip a whole lot. You have a little bit of a thumb riser back here. You can do that. Let's look at this blade a little bit closer. All the fingerprints on it. It's hard to show off these mirror polishy blades, especially when they're so fingered up. But yeah, I think it's a good size for EDC. The blade, I think it's a fine blade. This shape is really good for a lot of EDC stuff. You got a little bit of belly, you got some straight. Your tip is down low enough that you can get to your utility cuts. You can do some piercing and some drilling. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Good blade. D2, I think a lot of times if you see a USA made knife that's trying to come in under $100, they sometimes try to cheap out on the steel. And D2 isn't, the head of the pack when it comes to budget steels nowadays, but I think it's still, on this knife, I think it's good. I'd rather they go with the D2 than, I don't know, like a 420 or 440J. But yeah, good stuff there. Okay, let's go into some of the things that I would consider to be negatives. First of all, let's talk about the action, because I don't think the action is necessarily a negative or positive. I've gotten to where I can manipulate this knife pretty well. It does take some getting used to, though. This hole here is a little bit hard to get to, and if you've got bigger thumbs than me, or if you've got more nail than I have, it'll be pretty hard to get in there. It's very smooth, so you don't get a whole lot of traction. But once you get the sweet spot, which was not right there, oh my gosh. Once you get the sweet spot, you can flick it out. You can reverse flick it with no wrist. On the close, it takes a wrist flick to close it. If you just pull back the axis lock, yeah, it takes a pretty good little whack. There we go. There's that sweet spot. See, no wrist with the thumb. There we go. So the action, I would not say is fantastic. If we bring out my bug out again, yeah. And do I have any less expensive crossbar lock knives lying around? Whoa, bumped the camera. I don't think I actually I do. I'm not the biggest crossbar lock fan, so I don't usually keep a whole lot of them around, but here's this little Ozark Trail crossbar lock knife. And it's a little bit smoother, but it has its own problems. And this is on bearings. This knife is on washers, so keep that in mind. Okay, so the action does take some getting used to. Let's go into the things I think are real negatives. Number one, this clip is just kind of a lazy, generic clip. It works. It's not my favorite clip or anything. It works, which is fine. My biggest complaint with it is that it's not reversible. If that clip was reversible, this would be a completely ambidextrous knife. I don't know why they didn't make it reversible. Any company that releases a knife with an ambidextrous locking mechanism, they really should just make a reversible clip, because it just makes sense to me. But obviously it doesn't make sense to people that made this guy. Adjust my camera a little bit. When I bumped it, everything went a little bit screwy. Next thing, this whole knife is pretty slippery. It's a little bit hard to hold on to. That's one of the things that took a little bit of getting used to with the action. I mean, everything is just so slick. And so finding a good grip to flick it open is a little bit hard. I already said the hole is pretty smooth and rounded over. It is a little bit difficult to, get a grip on it. And even when you're just holding it, like, this works as a thumb ramp, but it's so smooth that your thumb just kind of slides over it. So maybe some jimping would have been good there. I know it's probably pretty difficult to have a mirror polished blade and do jimping, but that brings me to my next couple of complaints is I'm not sure if the mirror polish was necessary. It's kind of cool, but super fingerprinty. The slipperiness, like you can see here, I want to put the butt of the knife in my palm so I can flick it open, but when I try and do that, it just kind of like slides out to the bottom. Yeah, I don't know. And the fingerprints. I'm wiping fingerprints off right now. Ta-da! Yeah. Next thing. This thing has way too many screws. Look at all these screws in the handle. People complained about the Hogue Decas. Do I have one of those? I don't, right? I don't. Yeah, that's a lot of screws. That is a lot of screws. I don't think all of those are completely necessary, if I'm being honest. Maybe they were. I don't know. I haven't taken this thing apart, which brings me to the next complaint. This knife, I was going to take it apart and do some maintenance on it. As you can see, it is not centered at all. That is pretty atrocious centering. When the knife is open, there's a little bit of side to side, no up and down. It locks up solid. Yeah, look at that fingerprint. But, you know, I wanted to do some fiddling with it, see if I could maybe fix the action, maybe get that centering back to where it needs to be. And I discovered some interesting things. So, number one, the pivot is free spinning. That's never a good thing. But number two, and this is what struck me as very odd. Okay, so you can see I'm turning the opposite side. Let's see if I can show this off. Stay in there. Not the best hardware. But yeah, it just moves it. And let me double check myself before I say this because I may be misremembering, but I believe I found out that this side of the pivot and this side of the pivot are actually different sizes. So here's a T9. And yeah, it fits really well in there. Here's a T8. It fits this other side, but it's way too loose in that side. So, I don't know why they would do that. I like they use T9 hardware. That's kind of cool. All the other screws are T6s. But I'm not sure why you would have different tool sizes on either side of the pivot. Maybe it's because since it's a free spinning pivot, they're like, well, we'll make it easier for people to take it apart. You know, you put if you only have one set of drivers, your T9 there and your T8 here, and away you go. Or I guess it's T9 here and T8 here. I don't know. But regardless, I did not succeed in taking this knife apart, and I'm not sure if it really would have mattered if I had. So, let's go on to my final conclusions. How much is this knife? About $70. Do I recommend this knife for that price? Not really. I gotta be honest, not really. And it's kind of weird because most of the time when I review a knife that I don't like or I just can't recommend, it's because the manufacturing feels lazy. 9 times out of 10, if a knife comes across my review table and it's bad, it's because the manufacturing or design was lazy. With this knife, I don't think the design was bad necessarily, and I can tell that some care was taken in putting this knife together. You know, the mirror polish, the wood, the inlay quality, you know, the lock, the axis lock works, you know, pretty well. I can tell that Bear & Son really, really tried to put some work into this, but I just don't think, I don't think they hit the mark they were aiming for. And perhaps this is just a bad example. That's always possible. But for $70, I cannot recommend this knife. It does have a lot of issues. But this is one of the knives I'm giving away for free on my 1K giveaway. And as far as a free knife goes, D2 steel, crossbar lock, wood, made in the USA. For the low price of absolutely no dollars at all, I think it's pretty good. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this review, guys. Let me know what you think if you have one of these. Do you enjoy it? Is yours different than this one? I'd love to hear all those in the comments below. Until then, I've been Gideon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.